to another episode of Levy's Customs. This will be a part of 3 different videos I'll be doing on Lenovo gaming laptops, with the final one ending with my personal gaming laptop. I will then stack them up to see how they compare to each other. Today we're going to be taking a look at an older Lenovo gaming laptop, the Y580. This is the base model. It comes with an Intel Core i7 3610QM, which is a quad-core with hyper-threading, so 4-core, 8 threads, an NVIDIA 660M with 2GB of GDDR5, a 500GB 5400 RPM hard drive, and a resolution of 1366 by 768. So a slightly higher resolution than 720, but nowhere near 1080. When I bought this laptop, the 500GB hard drive inside was dead. One of the reasons why the person was selling it. So I went ahead and put a 500GB Western Digital SSD in there, the 2.5 inch and not the M.2, although this one does have an M.2 slot, one of the short ones. The cover and the area around the keyboard and touchpad, it's all aluminum, which is really nice. Feels really nice, very cool. But then the bezel around the screen and the base of the laptop is all plastic. The speakers in this laptop are by JBL, which, for those of you who don't know, make pretty decent audio equipment. It also has a DVD rewritable drive, but a Blu-ray drive was an option. Now let's talk benchmarks. All the games are tested at the native resolution for this laptop, which again is 1366 by 768. But each game is tested on a different quality setting. The first game is Counter-Strike Global Offensive at the highest preset. We got an average of 53.8 frames per second, a 1% of 7.7 frames per second, and a 0.1% of 3.4 frames per second. Now, despite the low 1%, this game played pretty smoothly, although I do suggest turning down the graphics. Next, we have Fortnite on the lowest presets, getting an average of 74.4 frames per second, a 1% of 31.4 frames per second, and a 0.1% of 5.5 frames per second. This ran pretty well. You might be able to get away with the next highest preset, but I advise leaving it at the low preset. Now we have Grand Theft Auto 5 on the lowest settings. We have an average of 43.1 frames per second, a 1% of 26.9 frames per second, and a 0.1% of 20.3 frames per second. I never saw this game go under 30 frames per second, and it ran smooth. You won't be able to get 60 frames per second without dropping the resolution though. With League of Legends on the highest preset, we got an average of 87.7 frames per second, a 1% of 57.4 frames per second, and a 0.1% of 2.2 frames per second. This game was smooth as butter, even at very high, although MOBAs, like League of Legends, are made to run on as many computers as possible. Overwatch at low preset gave us an average of 77.9 frames per second, a 1% of 19.7 frames per second, and a 0.1% of 4.6 frames per second. This game ran very well. You might even be able to turn up the graphics a step. Finally, we have Rainbow Six Siege at the lowest preset. We got an average of 61.8 frames per second, a 1% of 43.5 frames per second, and a 0.1% of 13.4 frames per second. Despite some stuttering, this game ran alright. I wouldn't raise the graphics settings at all. For our Cinnamon score, we got 1101. I honestly didn't think this laptop would do as well as it did. And yes, I didn't test this laptop with any heavy-hitting games, but I figured I'd go for more popular games that would actually run on this laptop. You do have to understand that this is a mid-range gaming laptop from 2012, and that generally laptops are slower than their desktop counterparts. But laptops have portability, and most of the peripherals that you use with a computer are built in, like the monitor and the keyboard. So each has their pros and cons. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope I'll see you in the next one.